Alright, this is Donald Wade, FTT210 Module 5, Assignment 2. Today's date is 5 October 2025. This week for this assignment is the thimble shape and finish for the muzzleloader project lab. Barrel tenons installed onto the barrel, front thimble installed onto the stock, and finally stock pins are to be installed. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so for the first thing, I've got my rear tenon kind of shoved into this inletting. But instead of what we're going to do, instead of removing material from the stock here, we're going to actually remove very little from the tenon itself. As we can see, it fits pretty good right in there with a little bit of persuasion. But what I want to do is we've got a little bit of a gap on this back side. So what I want to do is I want to try to get this a little bit cleaner, and because the wood is, you know, squared, I want to try to square this up a little bit as it is, except for this back end where it's kind of flared. I want to keep that, but the sides I want to smooth out. And to do that, I'm going to take some 220 grit. I've already taken a file to it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a backer, and I'm going to use the backer, and I want to go straight down on both sides, kind of smooth this out a little bit. I have kind of did a rough sand on this. I'm going to do a little bit more cleanup on here, and we're going to move on from there. So let me get started with a backer, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap my sandpaper kind of around. Okay, that way it gives me a nice flat area to work with. And I'm just going to run this back and forth a little bit. I don't want to remove too much material. Okay, flip it over, do the same thing. Just want to smooth it out, and then we'll go again in the opposite direction and do a test fit. And what I want to look for is I want to look for the front to be properly seated, but I also want the back to be kind of flush with the stock itself, and I'm liking that. I don't know if you'll be able to catch how flush that is there, and I want to make sure again this is fully seated on the front side, because we're going to clamp it and drill halfway through, and I'm happy with that. And then again, we can blend this when we do our final fit and clean up. I believe I'm going to, because there's a little bit of overhang with this wood on the stock. I think I'm going to clean that up later when we do the final finishing, but I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take a pencil, and I'm going to mark the end of this tenon. Okay. Alright, so what I did was I dropped this into place to get my measurements, and I marked the edge with a pencil inside the ramrod channel. Then what I did was I took a contour gauge, lined it up, made sure I was square to the stock, made my contour, and then I traced the line using the contour gauge, making sure it was straight. and I was able to go all the way around, and then I reset my contour gauge, got up here on these top rails, got my line lined up, straightened and squared everything up, and then redid my contour gauge. Okay, and then I traced that. So the distance between this measurement and the end of this tenon channel, this inlet, is the same length as the tenon itself. Then what I did is I reinserted the tenon, okay, I'm sorry, the thimble, okay, lined everything up, got it flush, pressed down on the front to make sure it was flush. And what I did was I took a scribe and I followed the contour of the inletting in here on the stock itself, just followed that. Then what I did was I created a scratch on the bottom side of the thimble, and I just traced that scratch with a black fine Sharpie. Okay, what that's going to allow me to do is going to allow me to get a easier measuring point of reference. Okay, so when I measure this, I can figure out where I want the screw to go through the stock and into the thimble, and I am able to find a good point. So if I want my point go in the center between these two bands, I can find the center, and then I can move my calipers to the center, and I'm going to line them up with this scribe mark that I have. So if I want center, I'm looking at 1 3/4 inches, 1.80. Then I can take this and I can transfer this here to my stock, and then I'm able to transfer that measure to the stock, and I can put a little dot and make a mark. Okay, that's where my length is from back to front, and then I need to find center from inside wall edge to inside wall edge on that contour, and I can do that using my contour gauge, or I can take and I can use the calipers to do the inside measurement. Okay, and we're at 0.87, and then I can do the math and divide that by 2, get the results of that, and then index that on the calipers, and we'll transfer that to the stock, and then I can do my center punch and then drill, figure out what drill bit I need, just slightly thinner or narrower than the screw itself, and we'll go from there. Okay, so to get that measurement, like I said, it took my 8790 divided by 2, 4395. So I locked that in on the calipers. Took my contour gauge, put that down in there. Okay, like so. Got my template. Okay. And then what I did was I took calipers and I measured I used the outside, and I measured on here, and I moved the bars, these pins on the contour gauge at the measurements, so it was the two very center, because the measurement kind of lined up on the outside of each. Okay, then what I did was I took that contour gauge and I put it back onto my stock, and then I took and I marked on the center of my my mark for the initial placement for where I wanted it on the thimble. Then I've got my point. I don't know if you can see it, it's right there. And what I'll do is I'm going to take a center punch. Okay, I'm just lightly, I've got it turned all the way down on the, as far light as it'll go, a little bit more, and I can go ahead and do a center punch where I need to drill. Okay, and then I'm going to get the drill bit, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the thimble, or the thimble back in, and I'm going to clamp it. Once I get it where I need it, nice and flush all the way around, I'm going to get some clamp. Okay, I'm going to use 2 clamps, and I'm going to use these small ones. And I want to clamp. I'll use my blockers. I'm going to put the first one on the outside. Make sure I don't cover up my where I'm going to drill. Then again, I'm going to check and verify that it's all square, and then I'll use the other one on the back side just to make sure that it doesn't move. So now we have this rear thimble in place, ready to drill. When I drill, I'm only going to drill halfway through the thimble, so I'm going to look and make sure that I'm not going all the way through. And we'll come back and I'll show the results of that. Okay, so what I have now is I have the hole drilled through the stock, and then I have the hole drilled through the top half of the thimble. I did use a starter bit just to make a pilot hole. And then I used 2 bits with countersink holders, I guess is what they're called, bits. I don't know. If I didn't have those, I could always use a chamfering bit to kind of countersink, or use a larger drill bit if I needed. But these worked out perfectly. The hole is just small to where I can run a tap through this to make it easier so I don't booger anything up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out a tap set and check the screw, and then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and tap the thimble to match the thread pitch on the screw, and then I can pull this off and I can shorten the screw so that it doesn't protrude out the bottom of or inside of this thimble for the ramrod. So let me get on that and we'll be back in a second. Alright, so we've got this installed here. I've got it countersunk. I've got it drilled out. I got the thimble tapped. We got it installed. One thing that I was having that I failed to clean up was the inside on this tang. When we put the ramrod in, I was having binding issues right where the channel transitions to the tang. So I needed to open it up just a little bit, right in here on this transition. And this is just the rear, and we can see it goes, the ramrod will go in, and no issues. And then it comes out relatively smooth. The issue I'm having now is obviously I don't have the thimble up front yet, so as it's coming out it's kind of binding up. but if I turn it over, okay, so that's fully seated. We want to make sure that there's no binding coming out. I don't have it in a vise at this time, so you want it to be able to go in all the way and come out without any issues. Okay, so we've got the ramrod rear thimble in, and now we're going to move on to doing the barrel tenons on the barrel, and then installing the tenon pins, barrel pins. We'll get that set up and we'll move on. Alright, so for this next part we're going to fit the barrel tenons to the barrel. I'm going to use a smaller triangle file, the medium triangle file. I'm going to use 150 grit sandpaper on a tile. Nope, I'm sorry, this is 2500 grit sandpaper. I'm not going to use that sandpaper, I just want to use the hard surface so that I can take and smooth off these bottom edges on both of these tenons before I can fit. So I've got the barrel laying here on the bench before I put it in the vise, one of the vices that I have here. But the way we're going to do this is we're going to fit these barrel tenons to the two barrel tenon slots. We're going to continuously check them, and when we install these, we're going to go from with the barrel bottom side up. Okay, now if I were to take this and put it in line with me, I'm going to go from right to left. So with it horizontal to me, I'm going to go front to back, which will be left or right to left. Okay, so we're going to push these from the front here to the back. So let's go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this triangle file and I'm going to match the angle of the bevel, and I'm going to kind of clean it up a little, paying attention not to remove any bulk of material. I want to keep it nice and smooth. On this as well, they want us to look for whichever end appears to be narrower, and looking at these, they're pretty dang close to equal without obviously measuring. So that's going to be something that I look at as we move on with this portion of the build. This is a crucial step, making sure that the barrel fits tight in the rifle stock and the barrel channel. We want to make sure that it's not, we don't want to remove too much material, and or else we're gonna have a not so good fit. Okay, so let me go ahead and move on with this, and I will come back when I start to drift these in, and we'll be back. So what I'm doing is I'm running 150 grit sandpaper on the bottom of this tenon, and what it'll do is it'll bring this down a little bit, and then what I'll do is I'll use the triangle file, and if I need to come down on this blade, on the bottom of this blade a little bit, I can do that as well, to where it'll fit and not bind on these cutouts. Another thing that I've done is I've measured the width of this because this is an octagonal barrel, I've measured the width of one of these flats, and then I've divided that by 2 to split it, and then I've made a mark with the calipers on the barrel, which will come out during the barrel finishing process. But I took a blue Sharpie and made a line to where it'll give me the center of this flat. That way when I line up the tenon, I can get it as perfectly center as possible. That's probably a little bit overkill, but it gives me another reference point because it's as wide as this flat. So all it does is give me another reference point. So let me get to sanding this end down, and we'll be back when I start drifting this in. Not sure what happened to the video, but here's the front tenon installed. This little bit of marks will come out when I finish the barrel. And then we've got the rear tenon installed. This is the blue mark I was talking about. I don't know if you can see. Now we'll move on to tenon pins. Okay, for this next part, we've got the barrel set down in the stock. I've got my indexing marks for the tenons. So and I've got it clamped into place so it's not going to go nowhere. Like I said, it is fully set in there. What we're going to do is I've got some 2x here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this back over, and I've got my measurement. It's 1 inch from the flat, so I'm going to use the 2x as the reference. And this thing's a bit long for my bench here. I keep bumping into this vise, my anvil vise over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler. I just got a 6-inch machinist ruler. I'm going to line it up with the indexing mark for the tenon, and then what I'll do is once it's lined up, I'm going to measure. I'll just mark on the stock here the 1 inch mark for both the front and the rear tenon, and that's going to be my place to drill. Once I get these marks and I'm ready to make my drill for my tenon pins, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another clamp, and then I'm going to turn this thing on its side and the vices so that I can make an accurate cut and or make an accurate drill all the way through. I've got to go through the stock, through the tenon, out the other side on both the rear and the front. So let me get this marked up. Let me get more clamps in place, and I'll be back with the drill, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I've got my tenon center marks, both rear and then front is going to be off camera a little bit. So I got my tenon pins here. Okay, they're 3 mil wide, and then I've got a drill bit that is going to measure at 2.82 mil. So I have a feeling I'm going to end up, once I drill these holes, I'll pull the barrel and then test fit the tenon pins and see if they'll go, make sure they'll go through the tenons. If not, I'll clean them up just a little bit and until they fit nice and snug, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I'm going to drill this out, and I'm going to take it slow. Alright, I had an issue with the camera again. The memory card filled up. I ended up changing bits, so we'll continue to drill this out. Alright, so we've got our holes drilled through the stock and through the tenons for the barrel. Now I'm going to check fit. I do need to clean them up just a little bit on this backside from blowout, which is expected. It's not a big issue. I can simply run the drill bit and go back through the other way, keeping everything straight. Okay, and then I can run a file on this backside and remove these burrs. Be careful not to nick the barrel burrs from the drill. And kind of flatten this out a little bit because I'm going to have to open them up just a tad bit. I don't need a whole lot of, I don't want a whole lot of give or play. It'd be really nice if I had a reamer, but no. I think, let me measure. Alright, so for the front tenon, the front thimble is already drilled and tapped. So what I'm going to do is I've marked my hole. I'll run the drill bit with the countersink, get deep enough to where I can drive the screw. And I didn't really measure, I kind of eyeballed it. I went halfway between the tenon and the front cap. So we'll run the screw down and drive it into the thimble, and we will file this screw down if we need. Let me adjust. I may need to go down just a smidge more. It's a bunch of trial and error. Get this to go in just right. Alright, we're going to do a final tighten. Okay, and then the easiest way to check, we're going to grab our ramrod, visually check, and I don't have any kind of hangout, so we're just going to run our ramrod through. It's pretty good if I say so myself. Cool. Alright, so to recap what we have done, we have done our thimbles, rear and front. We have installed our barrel tenons, front, rear. We've drilled our barrel tenons to accommodate the barrel tenon pins. We can install the barrel, making sure that it can fully seat. Okay. I don't want to add the pins just yet, but we do know it'll fit. Okay, we'll tighten this up a little bit. It'll kind of help hold the barrel in. We've already tested our ramrod in the thimbles, so I think all that's really, we got to do the front sight, and we have to do the trigger assembly and the trigger guard, and then we do the final finish on this muzzle loader. So, alright, well, till next time, stay safe.